In a previous video, we saw how to get set up within the iMathAS system to write questions. So we created a library, and then we looked at two different ways for actually adding questions to a library. So I have my sample course homepage pulled open. I've got a sample assessment at the bottom here, and I'm going to click on the gear icon and go to the questions page. Now I've got a couple questions within the assessment already, and I have my test library pulled open here. So we'll have this pulled open, and we'll just start adding questions to the test library as we go through this tutorial series. So once we have this questions page pulled open, when we look at a question, there's a column for source, and you can edit the source of the question. So I'm going to click on this edit link. It'll pull open this big page that you'll probably spend a lot of time looking at if you're writing questions. So in this video, we're just going to look at what each part of this page is and kind of take an overview of this question authoring page. I'm going to call this the question authoring page. And so if we start at the top, there's a description, and the description is kind of like a title. It's going to show when you're searching through questions. So it's good to make this descriptive, but not super long, because then the pages are going to look really long when you start to search for questions. So it should be a pretty brief description. Test question 1 actually isn't a very good name, but we'll leave it like that for now since we're not actually adding much content to this. Now, if we keep moving down, it'll show you who the author is. And then we have an option for use rights. So if we drop that down, we have a few options. Private means that only you can use the question. Allow use by all means that anybody can use the question, but only you can edit it. Allow use by all and modifications by group means that anybody can use the question, but the only people that can edit it are you and the people that are within your group. And then there's a bottom one, allow use by all and modifications by all, which means that anybody can edit it and anybody can use it. The last one is probably not a very good option to ever use. A lot of times you might just use the allow use by all. Unless you're working with somebody, in which case it might be nice to use allow use by all and modifications by group. But be very careful with this. Use the allow use by all by default unless you really have a good reason not to. We have some licensing info, so you can change the licensing on the question. Usually the iMathAS community license is fine. If you want to copyright it, you can. You have some other options here. And if you want to add some additional attribution, you can add a little extra there. So if you want to say a little more about the licensing, you can do that. These options, the license and additional attribution, maybe not such a huge deal. Now there's a library assignments where you can actually change which libraries the questions are in. So if you click on the select libraries button, it's going to pull open the little library tree, and you can actually add a question to multiple different libraries and tag it into multiple different libraries. So you can change the questions libraries here if you want. The next option is the question type. Now, iMathAS has a handful of different question types. So you'll see that this dropdown has kind of a long list of different questions. In upcoming videos, we'll talk through most of these different question types, but it's important to pick an appropriate question type, and we'll talk more about this. So for example, if you want students to enter a number, you pick the number option. If you want a multiple choice question, you select the multiple choice. Another common one is a multi-part question, which means you're going to have multiple parts to it. So you just basically tell iMathAS what kind of question you want to have. We got some links here. I'm going to come back to those because those are really important. But we'll jump down into the next one, which is common control. So common control is like where the question code lives. This is where you tell iMathAS what to do with the question, how to grade it, add extra programmatic stuff like randomized variables, things of that nature. So you're going to be writing some code in here, like telling it what the answer is. Do something like answer equals 7. I'll have a whole video discussing the common control. And then if you go down, there's a question text section. The question text is where you're actually going to enter in your, like, the actual text for the question. So like what text the student is going to see when they open the question. So here you can type in some stuff. You've got some formatting tools up here. I'll discuss this in detail in another video as well. And then if we keep scrolling down, you have options for a detailed solution. If you want to add a solution to it. There's a way to upload images. I'll talk more about this in another video. There's a help button option where you can add in a link to a help video. And then you've got some more options down here, but you probably won't really need to use these bottom ones. And then there's a few buttons along the way, like save and quick save and preview. These are going to save the question, and then the quick save and preview is a nice option that'll just do it'll save the question, and then it'll give you a preview of the question right here, where you can go in and actually look at the question. So then we come back to these links. I'll discuss the links in more detail in a little bit, but there's a writing questions help link, and this is a really important link. So what it's going to do is pull open a new window with a ton of documentation. This has a long list of documentation for writing questions within iMathAS. So I'll talk about this in more detail, but that writing questions help link is a great reference when you're writing questions.